We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender.
Hello everybody, today we are going to play a hex and counter wargame called Operation Seelöwe, the German invasion of Britain 1940, which was published by SPI Games sometime in the 70s, I believe 1971. I've got an original Ziploc version of the game, so basically it also came as a box set, but I didn't manage to get one of those. They look really good, so I had to make do with the Ziploc version. The idea behind it is that the Germans, during the Second World War, made plans to invade Britain. We all know that this didn't work, but there were different plans that had been made by different people. So there was the plan to invade during September. There was the Navy plan, which also involved a September invasion, and then there was the bold stroke fantasy, which was a July scenario. So as we all know, none of these ever came to fruition. They never really happened, but this game is simulating the what if for these three scenarios. Now, the way this works is it's set up as a two-player game, really, where you have the British player trying to defend England. As you can see, this is southeast England. You have London over here. You have Eastbourne down here, Southampton, and Weymouth down here, and you go up as far as Clacton-on-Sea, very well-known seaside resort, Yarmouth, and up here you've got Worcester, and Northampton, and Bristol over here, the Bristol Channel, Gloucester. So this is basically the layout of the map. The way the game is played is that the German player always starts, if you like, off map. And I'm just going to tilt the camera a little so that you can actually see how this works. Down here you see stacks of counters. So I'm going to zoom in now. A little more. Tilt some more. And here on this chart you can read N, J, and N, H, and J. These are the three scenarios that you can play. Each one has different waves. Basically, there are 15 game turns. So on every single turn, the German player can move forces onto the English map. In order to do this, he needs to use his transport points. So depending on the scenario and on the wave, the transport points are different. So for example, in the N scenario, on the first three waves, you have 14 transport points per wave that the German player can use. Now, there is a ratio of transport points to troop points. So basically, for each transport point, you can only embark so and so many troops. So if you have 14 transport points, it means you can move. I don't know if I'm not finding the list right now, and it's not so important for the first one because the first one is already set up. 1 combat strength point per transport point, 1 supply unit for free. Additional supply units come at the cost of 3 transport points per supply unit. So if you have a wave of 14, you can land 14 strength points. So in this case it would be, let's say, these are 10. Oops, then there is 16, so you couldn't even land all of these, because you could land 2 of these, 12, and then 1 supply unit for free, and then maybe one of the smaller units, you know, depending on what you have at your disposal, because also depending on which game turn you're on, you have different possibilities of landing different reinforcements. They all have to be available here in France. So for the first initial wave, all of these have been set up. And how this works is that it's printed on the map what you can land on the first turn. And I find that actually quite lovely, because you can set up the game really quickly using this mechanic. So if I just tilt the camera some more here. So I hope you can read this. Here it says n times 2, 6, 4, n times 1, 4, 5, n times 1, 1, 6, and then down here it says n and h times 1. So it means that for scenarios n and h, on the first wave, you have 1 supply unit. These are all empty because I'm playing the H scenario and there are no landing points here for the H scenario on this one. Landing works according to spaces on the map. So these arrows point towards spaces where landing can happen. So this arrow leads to space C, which is this landing area here. This arrow leads to D, so you can land here. And there are also other landing strips up here. So for example, this is landing strip D. Here you've got 2 units and 1 supply unit. So infantry landing here. And of course the British are already waiting. So for example, here is a unit in Hastings already. Now, of course, seeing as this is usually landing by sea or also flying in, there is also a German airborne box over here. It's dependent on the weather. So you have a weather chart also printed on the map, and I actually am very fond of games where stuff is printed on the map, because there is nothing worse than having to juggle like 1 million cardboard sheets with different pieces of information and then the rules to find out what you're supposed to be doing turn to turn. So here you have the weather chart. You roll a die, you roll a d6, depending on which scenario you're playing, and then you make a decision based on your die roll how you're doing. So in the September, you don't roll on the first and second wave. You roll always except for the first wave, where you just basically assume that you can land, because this is something that they state very clearly. If you have, let's say, 2 or 3 consecutive waves or consecutive turns where the German player cannot land due to adverse weather, you can stop the game, because they don't have any chance of winning. And that's, I mean, it can be, I guess, quite frustrating for the German player when this happens. I remember playing A Week in Hell a couple of times, it's based on a similar premise in that you have to get the troops into Hue first. And I played it 10 times, and not a single time was I able to get any troops into Hue. So basically, I couldn't play the game. And that is very frustrating. So here it's slightly different in that the German player gets the first wave for free. So I will now switch off the camera and I will play a couple of turns, and then I will return later and give you an update. Bye!